Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I want to talk to you about something I learned from John Maxwell a long time ago. He calls it the law of the process, which basically states leadership develops daily, not in a day. So some of the stuff I'm going to share, not much of it, but a little of it comes from what I learned from John in one of his books. I think it was Leadership 101. I've read a lot of John's books, so I don't remember it all, but a lot of the content today, most of it, I'm going to just add in my own thoughts and enhance the principle that he just shared, or I just shared with you, the law of the process. Leadership develops daily, not in a day. You know, I've taken that and turned it into a lot of different lines, like character, for instance. Character is developed daily, not in a day. Transformation happens daily, not in a day. There's a strong principle in that quote. But John says leadership develops daily, not in a day. So if you've been following me long enough, you know when I talk about leadership, I define leadership same way as John does. I learned it from John a long time ago. Leadership is influence. He says nothing more, nothing less. I agree. Whoever has the most influence at any given time for any given reason in any given moment is the leader. It doesn't matter what the title is. Doesn't matter what their rank is, if they're in the military or law enforcement or something like that. Doesn't matter how long they've been doing the job or how long they haven't been doing the job. Whoever has the most influence at any moment, that person is the leader. And most of the time when there's a group of people, it's moving around. It's constantly moving. Leadership. Everyone is a leader because everyone has influence. Everyone is a follower because everyone is influenced with an ED by other people. And then everyone is also a manager of things and processes at home and at work. So everybody's a leader, everybody's a follower, everybody's a manager. The key to being highly effective is being in the right role at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. But today I want to talk to you about really an event and the process, the event and the process. So a lot of times, you know, we go speak to people. We walk in the room, we speak for 2 hours most of the time. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's 3 days. But we get a lot of clients who bring us in to speak for 2 hours. They take advantage of our book deal where they currently the book deal special offer is they buy 300 books. Any selection of our 32 books they can mix and match, and they get the books, and we go up and speak anywhere in the 50 United States. We pay our expenses and we go speak. And it comes with 2 hours of our time. We pay all our expenses. They don't have to do that. They basically pay $5,400, which is the cost of the 300 books, and put some people in a room, and we show up. We tell them if they'll invest in the people, we'll invest in the people. But we teach them the lesson I'm about to teach you. I don't think I've really taught it in depth on my podcast. After 300 episodes, I really can't remember. But that's one of my biggest challenges is trying to not duplicate things. I know I duplicate a lot of principles, but I try not to duplicate an entire podcast. So I think this is the first time I really got in depth talking about this. But anyone can learn to be a better leader. You're not going to do it in a day. You're going to do it over a bunch of days. Takes time. But leadership can be taught and leadership can be learned by anybody. You do not have to be a boss. Remember, I got my book, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. That book's not written for the boss. That book is written for an entry-level frontline worker. It's a workforce development resource for leaders who want to create a high-performance team of individuals in their workforce. All right. So anybody can learn it because it can be taught. I teach it on every podcast. But it's a choice you make. Leadership is a choice you make, not a place you sit. You got to understand that. And just because you are a boss doesn't mean you're a very good leader. You might be a very good manager and a poor leader. But we ain't talking about too much of that today. Really want to talk about that event versus the process. But leadership's more caught than it is taught. It's about what we think, what we say, what we do, because somebody's always watching. So let's talk about this, the event and the process. I can tell you this, most people overestimate the event and underestimate the process. What I'm talking about there is like when we come in to speak, it's a big deal. And it is a big deal. They have to get, they have to get a lot of people off the job most of the time. They have to quite often reserve a room at like a hotel or somewhere, a conference center, pay everybody to come in. A lot of times they feed the folks. So it's a big deal to doing an event. I mean, there's a lot of energy, a lot of focus, costs a lot of money. A lot of times they paying for the books, they paying the people to be in the room, they paying for the food, they paying for the room, all kind of stuff. A lot of expense. And hardly any of it is us. It's just the books, and everybody's getting a book, right? And we're basically speaking for free. What we do is we lower down our rate to the cost of the books and give the people the books, and they pay us to speak. But it's all the same, whichever way you want to look at it. But one reason we give out the books and one reason we want to do that deal is because of what I'm about to teach you right here, because the process is so important. Most leaders, though, all they want us to do is just come speak. I actually spoke to someone yesterday, was talking to about this, and they said, well, I don't know if we want the books. I don't know if, this person that was talking to me, they were going to have to get approval from above, and they were like, I don't know if the leaders, they don't think people are going to read the books. I said, well, I know people read the books. I got clients all over the country that read the books. As soon as I start hearing that, I start knowing I'm talking to people in a formal authority leadership position who may not be very good leaders. Because I told that gentleman yesterday, I said, hey, if the leaders don't want to lead book studies, that's a good sign they don't want to be leaders. Because managers of people, they don't want to lead book studies. They have zero desire. Leaders of people, they get excited about book studies because they understand it. It's growing and developing the people, and it's growing and developing themselves. And leaders of people have a strong desire to grow and develop themselves and others. Managers of people, they don't have any desire to do that beyond what's required for the people to do the job. So we overestimate the event, we underestimate the process. And I tell people when we come in the room, it's like we're spraying you with a fire hose. You get a lot of stuff. When you're in a room with us, we tell a lot of stories, we share a lot of principles. It's a fire hose. You ain't gonna get most of it. Most of it's if I spray you with a fire hose, you might get some of it in your mouth, but most of it's gonna go past you. That's the event. But I always talk about the drip. The leader's goal has got to be to keep the drip going after we leave. That's one reason we do the book deal. So they got a lot of books. They can include a lot of people, or they could have 30 people and they get 300 books. Everybody gets 10 books apiece, 10 different books. So they could do 10 book studies with that group of 30 after we leave. That take people 2-3 years most of the time to do that. That's the drip. That's the process. So we teach them this lesson. And I'm gonna kind of break it down for you right now, but the event encourages decisions. The process encourages development. So when we come and we speak, we're encouraging people to make decisions. We're motivating, we're inspiring people, we're sharing thoughts, we're sharing thought-provoking content, we're raising their level of awareness. Hopefully, they're going to make some different decisions, but that's what we're in the room trying to do, encourage decision making. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. Even today, I'm trying to teach you, if you're a leader, or even if you're just listening to the podcast is an event. The process, growing and developing yourself. If you listen to every podcast every week, then the podcast really for you is a process. If you just listen to one podcast, and you don't really go do anything, but it gets you fired up, makes you want to go do something, but you don't actually do it, then it's like an event. But the process encourages development. So when folks do the book study after we leave and they do it for weeks or months or years, they're doing book studies, that's where the real transformation happens. That's where real development happens throughout the process. Leaders are leading and facilitating book studies. They're encouraging development of the people who are participating. Again, managers of people, they have zero desire to do that. If you listen to this podcast, you say, man, I ain't leading no book study with my team. They don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm just telling you. That thought right there is a manager of people thought. You're not going to build a lot of trust. You ain't going to develop a lot of people. You're not going to be seen as a leader and a developer. You're going to be seen as the boss. But hopefully, if you listen to this podcast, that ain't you. I know a lot of people who listen to my podcast or hear us speak, they start doing book studies at home. That's the process. They taking the process home to grow and develop their children and their spouse. Pretty cool when you hear that. Another thing about the event versus the process, and I touched on it a minute ago, but the event motivates people. The process matures people. Like you come to the event, you're going to get motivated. You come in a room where there's somebody talking about leadership, personal growth and development, telling you inspirational and motivational stories, you're going to get motivated. But you ain't going to get matured in a couple of hours or an hour or however long it is that you're in a room like that. You're at the event. You're going to mature over time with the drip, the process, constantly changing your thoughts, constantly raising your awareness. Not one day, but consistently and continuously over time, like reading a book. You've heard me say it if you listen long enough. I've been reading books every day since 2012. Not a whole book every day, but some amount of reading every day. I keep the drip going for myself. I don't need a boss or a leader or somebody telling me to read a book. I do that. I understand about the process versus an event. Another thing is the event is a calendar issue. The process is a culture issue. So you got to put the event on your calendar. Everybody knows about it. It's a big deal. You might send out some flyers on it. There might be an announcement made about it. All kind of things. That's a calendar issue. But the process is going to transform your culture. And remember, I got a book. If you don't know what to do and you're interested in transforming your culture, whatever that means, taking it to the next level and beyond, check out Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high performance teams. And I got a podcast series on that. I think it starts at 179, and you can listen to a 30-part podcast series on that. But it's about the process. A lot of times people come in and have us cast the vision, but that's an event. They buy culture books for some people, for everybody, and they use the culture book to cast the vision through the process. But they use the event for us to walk in and cast the vision, most often to the formal authority leaders. And then the leaders conduct book studies with their team and cast the vision. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? But learning the language is a culture issue. Learning the language of leadership. Learning the principles of leadership and personal growth. You're not going to learn them all at an event. You ain't even going to get a drop in the bucket at an event. You're just going to get an introduction, a tiny amount. It's going to seem like a lot if you've never been to anything like that. But it ain't a lot, trust me. Don't seem like it. But if you get serious and you start realizing there's hundreds of thousands of books on this subject, you're going to realize you ain't getting much in an hour or two. Got to have the drip. The event challenges people. The process changes people. See, when we walk in the room, we're challenging everyone to step up to the next level, climb to the next level and beyond. We introduce content. We introduce new thoughts. It's thought-provoking. Again, raises your awareness. It challenges people. Doesn't change them necessarily in that moment. Most often, that's not going to happen. They may be inspired to change, but they're not literally going to change in that moment. Remember, we talked about it earlier. It encourages decisions, it motivates people. But here I'm saying that's challenging the people in an event, but it changes people in the process, in the drip. You keep the drip going, constant and continuous, consistent development over time. It's going to change people. They're going to transform. You can't go through this stuff constantly and consistently. That's why some of the leaders I know, they do a drip. They do something every day at a minimum. It's like a quote. They talk about a quote at a daily kickoff and what it means. A principle, really. They're sharing one principle. Some leaders do the book study. They do a chapter a week. Sometimes leaders do 3 chapters a day for one day, once a week. Some leaders do 3 chapters on 3 different days during a week. And it's easy in my books because they're 3-page chapters in most of my books. So you can cover a chapter in 6 or 7 minutes. We're not talking about, a lot of times people say, well, we ain't got time to do a 30-minute or an hour book study. No, I'm talking about like 10 minutes, 15 at the most, to do one chapter with a group of 4 to 10 people. So that's what that's about. That's the drip. That's the process. But people overestimate the event. They underestimate the process. They'll put people in the room, but they won't do the book study. If you had to pick between one of the two, do the book study. You don't have to put us in the room. Do the book study. It's better if you do both because you motivate and inspire, and then you got everybody fired up to go do the book study. But the event is easy. The process is difficult. See, the event, it's a one-time deal right there. You just got to get everybody assembled, get them in a room. Mac and Rio comes in, talks to them. They walk out. That's it. Over with. Leader ain't got to do nothing except approve it most of the time. But the process, doing book studies or doing training and development on leadership, however you do it, watching videos, listening to podcasts, talking about it, people do it all kind of ways. There's no right or wrong way. The key is you need to be doing something constant. Keep the constant drip going. The event's the fire hose, process is the drip. The event's easy. Again, all you got to do is show up. Spend a little money. People show up, they leave. That's how easy an event is. But what we're trying to do, what we're trying to get leaders to do, is the difficult part of the process. Keep it going. We bring in a lot of momentum. We generate a lot of momentum. Keep it going. Start the book studies. Start daily or weekly training, monthly training. Do something. Keep it going. But most leaders don't. They do an event and they don't do the process. Again, that's better than nothing. But a lot of times what'll happen is that they'll get somebody fired up, but the leaders won't do the process. They won't grow and develop everybody or themselves. They just do an event. So then they introduce it to somebody. Somebody gets fired up. They start growing like crazy. They outgrow the leader in the company, and the best folks leave. But it's because they outgrew the leader. It's called the law of the lid. I may do an episode on that sometime soon. I've talked about it before, but I may do a full-blown episode just on that one thing. But the organization can outgrow the lid on the organization. I mean, the organization cannot outgrow the leader's lid, the leader's ability to lead. So what happens is everybody stays pressed underneath the leader's leadership ability, meaning they're suppressed, or they release themselves and go to another company with a higher level leader where they can grow. That ain't what you want. You want to grow and develop people, and you want to keep people. But you do not train the people because they might leave, because what happens if you don't train them and they stay? That's far worse than training somebody and they're leaving. Is you don't train anybody and they all stay. That's not the way you want to be. So the event is where we're taught, but the process is where we learn. See, I always tell people I can teach leadership in a room, but you can't learn leadership in a room. What I mean is you got to go out and apply what I'm teaching. That's when you learn. When I'm teaching is not when somebody learns it. When they learn to apply it. When they start applying it, that's when they learn what they've been taught. So John Maxwell says this. He says, too often we try to microwave our leaders. That's why we have so many Pop-Tart leaders. We need to stop microwaving leaders and start crock-potting leaders. Leadership development takes time. That's exactly right. And John also says the secret of our success is discovered in our daily agenda. So whatever it is you want out of life, if you're a leader, hopefully you want to grow and develop people. But just generically speaking, and I'm going to leave you with this, stop waiting. Whatever it is you're waiting on in life, you're waiting on something. So stop. Whatever it is you want to achieve in life, stop waiting. Stop waiting until your car or your home's paid off. Stop waiting until you get a new car or a new home. Stop waiting until your kids leave the house. Stop waiting until you go back to school. Stop waiting until you finish school. Stop waiting until you lose 10 pounds. Stop waiting until you gain 10 pounds. Stop waiting until you get married. Stop waiting until you get a divorce. Stop waiting until you have kids. Stop waiting until you retire. Stop waiting until summer. Stop waiting until spring. Stop waiting until winter. Stop waiting until fall. Stop waiting until you die. Make it happen or someone else will. You got to take action. As John said, the secret of your success is discovered in your daily agenda. But I hope you got some value out of the event and the process comparison. If you're a leader of people, you've got to understand what I talked to you about in this episode. You got to know the difference between the event and the process. Both are valuable, but they're different. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.